Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be looking at the 2021 gubernatorial elections in Virginia and New Jersey, and taking a look at where I think these races stand as of right now. So, I know I haven't really been covering these races as much, last year in June of 2020, I was talking all about the presidential race, the Senate race, and those gubernatorial elections, and, really, uh, we have less than 5 months to go till these gubernatorial elections, and I know that might sound like a long time, but it's gonna it'll these elections are going to be here before we know them, or before we know it. Um, so I think it's better we start analyzing these right now. And again, I haven't been talking about these too much, but I think it would be a good time to start since the night of recording this, the primaries were held, and we had two pretty decisive victories, both in the Virginia Democratic governor primary and in the New Jersey governor primary. So, first of all, for the Republicans, they had a convention in May, and they nominated Glenn Youngkin to be their nominee. And Youngkin, I think, is a pretty good candidate. He has the benefit of not having tied himself to Trump too much, while at the same, on the flip side, I still think he has the ability to mobilize Trump supporters and get them out to vote in an off year election that really is not going to get too much attention. Now, Terry McAuliffe is basically the epitome of establishment Democrat. He was actually the former governor of Virginia. So Virginia's the Constitution of Virginia is really weird, to be completely honest. So Governor Ralph Northam, who is the incumbent Democratic governor, he can serve as many terms as he wants, but they cannot be consecutive. So in 2025 he can run for another term, but he cannot run now. So Terry McAuliffe, who was the governor of the state from 2014 to 2018, is going to just run for another term. So that's basically what's going on here. And McAuliffe, like I said, or T-Mac, depending on what you want to call him, he's pretty much the epitome of an establishment Democrat. He's not really progressive or moderate. He's going to govern. If he's elected, he would govern basically as your average Democrat, and he would be a similar governor to Ralph Northam, who was who is currently the governor of Virginia. So now in New Jersey we have the primaries were held tonight. So Phil Murphy is the incumbent Democratic governor. He will be running for re-election. He was first elected in 2017. We'll talk about those in a second. And he won his primary tonight. He was essentially unopposed. And he's a very popular governor, especially within his party. He has pretty high approval ratings, although that being said, he comes from a state that Joe Biden did carry by, I believe, 18%, so a pretty safe Democratic state. Now, Jack Ciattarelli, who would be the Republican nominee, is a former New Jersey state assemblyman, and he represented the 16th district, and Ciattarelli is a pretty moderate Republican. Now, that being said, he's not really an anti-Trump Republican, but he has said that he's more moderate. He's not really a populist Republican, which has its benefits. I think it's better for New Jersey because New Jersey is not really a Trumpian state. We talk about New Jersey being more suburban and more college educated than most states. So if a Republican were to win in New Jersey, which the Republicans did win a governor race the last time they picked up, as he was in 2009, where Chris Christie won a three-way race between him, John Corzine, and Chris Daggett. Daggett ran as a left-leaning independent. He got 6% of the vote, which is pretty significant. And this was at a time where, in 2009, Obama had just been elected. He'd been sworn in, basically a year prior. So, the national environment was more favorable to Republicans in 2009 than it is now. And New Jersey just has gotten bluer since then. It's gotten more polarized, it's gotten bluer since then. We talk about New Jersey's electoral history. 20 years ago, in 2004, most notably, it was a competitive state. The Bush campaign tried to win the state of New Jersey, and they didn't win it. But they came pretty close. I think they only lost it by 5 or 6, which would be a really solid showing for a Republican nowadays. In 2013, Christie was reelected. He beat Barbara Buono easily, but he was an incumbent in a Republican environment, and he was popular at the time. He was very popular at the time. He was a typical red state or blue state Republican. He was very well liked. Then 2017, his lieutenant governor, Kim Guadagno, comes. Guadagno, actually, I believe is how you pronounce it. She comes, and she loses to Phil Murphy by 14.1%, which is, essentially what was expected. I mean, Murphy did a little better in the rural areas than Joe Biden, but overall he ran behind him, especially in the urban areas, but nevertheless a Democratic pickup. And now we're in 2021 where we have Murphy going up against Jack Ciattarelli. So first we'll talk about Virginia, then we'll go down to New Jersey, because I think Virginia is a little more interesting than New Jersey, mostly because of the fact that Virginia was the state that was closer. So Joe Biden carried Virginia by a 10.1%, or basically 500,000 votes, which is a pretty solid margin. He became the first Democrat to win Virginia by over 10% since Lyndon B. Johnson in 1964. Now, Virginia has been a blue state for a little bit, it's a little more than a decade. Barack Obama became the first Democrat to win in 2008. Since LBJ, he won it by, but he only won it by, I think, 3 or 4. Then 2012, he wins it by a similar margin, I think. Or no, I think he won Virginia by 9. Yeah, he won Virginia by 9 in 2008, then he wins it by 4 or 5 in 2012. Narrows up again in 2016. It's a 3-point Clinton win, but there was a lot of third parties, and, she won it with like 47% of the vote. Then in 2020, it just really solidified for the Democratic Party. They win. Actually, in 2018, they won a Senate race there by 17. In 2017, they actually won the governor's race there by 9. They won the Senate race there in 2018 by 17, and then they win the Senate race in 2020 by, I think, 15, and then Joe Biden carries the state by 10. So this is still a state that has some potential for the GOP, but I really, really would not think that it would be too competitive. I think at best it's a 5-point victory for Terry McAuliffe. And again, we talk about Glenn Youngkin being a good candidate. I think that the less Republican voters know about him, the better for his campaign. I think he should just run a campaign solely based on talking about what he could do to improve the state of Virginia, calling out I'm not from Virginia, but I'm sure my Virginian viewers could tell me, unpopular things in Virginia from both sides. Now, on one hand, he's running in a blue state, and he does not want to alienate moderate Democrats who would be key to him winning the election. On the other hand, if he talks and brands himself as a Trumpian or a moderate, that could turn off the other end of the party. So a very tight rope, really, Glenn Youngkin has to walk a very tight rope to win this race. I don't think he's been able to do that. Even if he runs a good campaign, which he could very well run a good campaign and still lose by a lot. We saw in 2017, Ed Gillespie was the Republican nominee. Actually, we should pull that up right now. Ed Gillespie was the Republican nominee. He ran a pretty good campaign. In fact, there was a lot of talk about Gillespie potentially winning this race. In fact, I think there was one time I remember this was, I was getting into politics at the time after 2016. I was like, what is the next election going to be? Next big ones were the 2017 gubernatorial elections. I remember Ed Gillespie was, there was kind of this 11th hour shift towards him where it was like, oh my gosh, is Gillespie going to win this race? Northam came out on top. He won by 9, but still a pretty good campaign. Gillespie ran a pretty good campaign. So we could see a similar thing with Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. And, to be completely honest, since these are going to be the only elections that we're going to have to analyze at the time, we're going to overthink it. We're going to spend way too much time analyzing it and try to make it more competitive than it's going to be. I do think that this race is a likely Democratic race. I do expect Terry McAuliffe to win by similar margins as Joe Biden. Virginia, he can do very well in the urban areas and the Fairfax suburbs. He's a pretty popular guy. He's well known by Virginians. He's won a gubernatorial election before. He knows how to do it, and I think he's a pretty safe choice for the Democrats. And Virginia being a more moderate state, I think he'd be favored to win. I think he'd win by 9 or 10. I think if it's over 10, that's a good sign for Democrats for 2022. If he wins by, in between, 6 to 10, I think pretty what you'd expect. If the margin becomes under 5, like if we see him winning by a Clinton 2016-esque margin, then Democrats should be, a little put off by that. But Virginia right now, likely D. I do think that Glenn Youngkin is a good candidate, but just not doing enough to win a state like Virginia. Now, if we take a look at the state of New Jersey, what they've got going on in 2022. Oops, I don't know why I opened that tab. 2021, excuse me. Phil Murphy is really an interesting governor because he has governed as a Democrat in a safe blue state, but has, really been outspoken for his handling of COVID-19 because he has been very very direct, I guess you could say, in calling out people he disagrees with on the issue. I remember, I think it was maybe like October, November of 2020, like maybe half a year ago, where he was talking about Matt Gaetz, who had, I think, partied in either New York or New Jersey at a young Republicans, or I think it was in New Jersey actually, like some young Republican club, and this was at the peak of when COVID was really spiking across the country, and he was seen without a mask. Uh, he was seen without a mask, and Phil Murphy saw the footage, and he said, Matt Gaetz shouldn't come to our state anymore. He doesn't, he doesn't agree with the laws, and he called him Matt Putz, which, it's pretty polarizing to say, but it was well received by his base, I guess, is what I'll leave it at for that. But Murphy is expected to win re-election, and you can see why. I mean, he flipped a seat, but he won it by 13.5%. I think according to Wikipedia, it was 14%. The post uploading it, so it was a 14-point win for Murphy, which is safe in my book. He ran ahead of Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton had a pretty bad performance in New Jersey. I think she won it by 10, which is pretty bad performance for a Democrat. But state that Joe Biden won by 18, Murphy's not going to do enough to lose the race. Plus, when we talk about Jack Ciattarelli, he may be calling himself a moderate, but he's tying himself to Chris Christie. And Chris Christie, as we know, he won elections back 10 years ago, but he's not popular anymore because of the Bridgegate scandal. And I think I saw polls like he has like a 15% approval rating in New Jersey. 15%. That's atrocious. And if Ciattarelli wants to tie himself to Chris Christie, he can do that, but it's not going to help him in this race, especially in a state where where the Republican Party's really been soundly rejected over these past couple of years. So just to fill out a map, actually this map doesn't seem to be loading. I don't know why. It just is not loading, but yeah, so New Jersey is a safe Democratic whole governor race as of right now. Virginia is likely Democrat. So thanks for watching this video, guys. I'll keep you posted on these races, and I'll see you all next